We are live.
All right, then I'm going to get going. Brethren, gentlemen, if we have any non-Masons, welcome to another in the series of Masons at Work, brought to you by the three presidents, something we're trying to do regularly during lockdown, and I'm sure it may continue when we do open. Tonight, again, light-hearted interview with the 2nd District Grand Principal on the significance of the Royal Arch. I remind you, next week, we're going to ask the Mark will be presenting. The week after, we may do the pathway presented by the District Grand Mentor. I know Paul Knight is on, and if he'd like to present as the ruler in another side order, and then the OSM at the same time. So please do engage us and let us know when we can fill you in and give you a slot. Brethren, friends, tonight again is just an interview. We're keeping it lighthearted. There's going to be an engagement between Mike Reinders and Vaughn. I've introduced him as the 2nd District Grand Principal, and now we're going to go over to the first names of Vaughn and Mike. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over. Brethren, it is a webinar. So any questions you do have, please post them for me in the chats. I will then relay them to Michael, who can pose the question. Mike, I hand over to you.
Good evening, brethren, gentlemen. If we have got ladies in the audience, welcome. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Mike Reinders, and tonight I've got the privilege to be able to pose a few questions to the 2nd District Grand Principal in the district, excellent companion Vaughn Williams. Vaughn, how are you doing this evening?
Doing very well, thank you, Mike. A little nervous because I know when you and Lance get together and plan one of these things, it can only be embarrassing to me. So I've got my guard up and I'm ready. But allow me, please, just to congratulate both yourself and Lance for the great job that you've done as far as these webinars are concerned. I know you had over 100 people at your first one, which was more of an introduction to Masonry. And I think there could be nothing better than this type of thing just to help keep the interest going. So hats off to you guys. You've done a great job.
Thank you so much, Vaughn. We'll try and not put you on the spot too much during the course of the evening. And without further ado, let's get cracking. I think, yeah, what a lot of the attendees tonight would like to know is, why did you join Royal Arch back in the day? What caused you to join the order?
Well, you know, Mike, we lived in very different times back then. There was no Google or Wikipedia or anything like that. And the only way you could find out about things was to actually join and go and have a look. I was a little crippled by fact when I first became a Mason. I'd only just become a Master Mason when I was called up to complete my national service. And I missed a whole lot of things. By the time I got back to Masonry, a lot of the guys that joined with me had moved right past me, had just zoomed past. And I was trying desperately to play catch up. I'd heard of the Royal Arch, but there was nowhere that we could go and look it up. There was nowhere that I could get any facts about it. And I just picked up little stompies here and there. And I was lucky enough to be in Orphic Lodge, and we had two very esteemed brethren there. We had Gerald Fotonakis, who went on to become District Grand Master, and he and Costa Carides, another Grand Officer, called me aside after a working and asked me to step away from the room and got me into a little huddle and told me a little bit about the Royal Arch and said that they would like me to join. I've got to tell you that I was so honored at being proposed and seconded by these guys that I would have been the car wash or the car guard if they'd asked me. You know, I was thrilled. And I had no idea what was going to happen. I duly filled in the forms. You don't say no to brethren like that. I duly filled in the forms, got my regalia, and I really couldn't wait. And I think the fact that we have all these new things like Google, I think tends to spoil it for the chaps a little, because they tend to get to the meeting or the exaltation meeting, and they sort of know what's going to happen. And I was very privileged because I had no idea what was going to happen. It came as such a surprise, but it just seemed to be the next step. And the way they explained it to me, it was a follow on. And but I think I really joined more because I felt honored that these guys had asked me, and I would have felt really bad saying no. So that's why I joined.
Vaughn, without giving away too much, and I hope you're not too sensitive about your age, but what year was that, if I may be so bold to ask?
Okay, it was a little after the Rinderpest. So I think this was about 1989, 1990. Maybe 91. So it was in that era, last century, and I was really a little bit lost. So this came as a big surprise for me. At least I was able to do something active, and I loved it. I really did. But being 1990, around there, I was probably around 28, 27, 28. I'm not shy about my age.
But yeah, no, good. I think there's what you can say about that. I think you always join Masonry, and you always join these orders at exactly the right age. I don't think there's a right or a wrong age. I was initiated with someone that was, I think, 64 years old at that time. That was an entered apprentice with me. So yes. Carrying right on, and I think this is also maybe one of the more enlightening questions, but what do you personally enjoy the most about the Royal Arch, Vaughn?
I've got to tell you that your question has 3 or 4 answers, because when you join the Royal Arch, you enjoy the special effects, the lovely chapter room, the way the room is set out. There's so many amazing things there. When you first go into the craft, there's just the carpet, and when you come to the Royal Arch, there's so many things to go and look at. And I found that awe-inspiring. I really did. And then you sort of settle down and you start to listen to the ritual, and the ritual is absolutely amazing. So that was my next thing. I love the ritual, and I started to learn as much as I possibly could in the ritual. I'm going to give you a secret about my laziness. One of the nice things was that I only had to go to chapter 4 times a year, instead of 10 times a year that you do in the craft. So that sort of suited me at the time. And I then suddenly became very interested in the philosophical side of it and the esoteric side of it. Royal Arch has so many meanings behind meanings that if you just go a little bit further and you dig a little bit, you start to unearth the most amazing features. And I just thought that Masonry was really the gift that keeps giving. Every time I went, there was something else. There was something else that amazed me and astounded me. And I just never got tired of it. I never got tired of the little bits of goodness that it put into your heart. You just took on a different persona when you came out of a Royal Arch convocation. It was just something that I really wanted to progress in. And at the moment, I like it because as a district officer, I only have to do 14 or 15 meetings a year, whereas most of the other guys are doing 40 and 50 meetings a year. It's not that onerous, I think.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, Vaughn. I must say, I totally agree with you. I think Royal Arch is one of the more, if I may be so bold as to say, one of the more flamboyant degrees. It's really something to behold if you haven't gone through it. And I would I would agree with you 100%. And then something, if I could move straight along, something that maybe speaks more to our personal curiosities. Could you ever have imagined when you joined the Royal Arch back in the day that you would one day become the 2nd District Grand Principal, which is one of the most senior positions within the Royal Arch District?
I've got to say, no, not at all. I think Masons are very much like sportsmen. You want to try and achieve the best you can, and you want to try and do the best you can. But you want to be the best Mason that you can. You don't want to be the best 2nd District Grand Principal there ever was. So I just wanted to be the best Vaughn Williams that I could. And as I progressed, both as a Mason and as a Royal Arch companion, I found that I could suddenly perform ritual, which is something I was very nervous of at first, standing up in front of all these older guys, especially being at Orphic Lodge, where you had so many high-ranking members, and suddenly this youngster gets up and he wants to do the 1st degree charge. The guys would look at me like I was crazy. But I found that I developed a confidence with what I was doing, and I definitely wanted to become a district officer. District anything, district car wash, I would have taken it. So I wanted to become a district officer, but never did I believe that 2nd District Grand Principal would have been my calling. And I must say that I was the Deputy Grand Director of Ceremonies for 2 or 3 years, and then I became the District Grand Director of Ceremonies. And after my 3rd year, I was given Grand Rank. And I know that when you get Grand Rank, you normally get put out to pasture, as it were. And I really thought, well, I'd been active for 8 or 9 years. I'd done my bit. I was finished. I got Grand Rank, and I would just sit back and watch. And when I got that call from Professor Guy Charlesworth offering me a chain, I was gobsmacked. I really didn't expect it. And a lot of people said, "Oh, well done. You deserve it." But how do you deserve it? You don't. You do what you can as a Mason. You do what you can as a Royal Arch companion. You teach where you possibly can, and in so many places you're taught humility. And I think if you are truly a humble person, you don't see yourself at that level. I was absolutely shocked, and I had really thought I was done. So this was a pleasant surprise. I wanted to get back towards the craft, and I thought that having a break in Royal Arch could have led me to pursue something in the craft. And I think I've been a chain for 3 years now, and I must say it's been great. It really has. And when I say we, myself, Tom, and Lance, are just, in my opinion, so different to the district grand principals that were there 12 and 13 years ago. They were very unapproachable, stuffy guys that would bark out commands and things like that, And I just feel that myself, Tom, and Lance, as Larry, Curly, and Mo would do, we bring a little bit of humor to proceedings. We allow people to be a lot more relaxed, and I think we're a lot more approachable than the chaps were 15 or 20 years ago. So I think that change in focus led me to maybe be able to slip my personality in there and be in with a chance. I saw David Penrose was online with us. David's uncle, Travis Penrose, was an absolutely amazing Mason. He really was. He was fantastic. And he stayed near me, and I would often give him lifts to chapter or to lodge. And we had just finished one of the AGMs, and we were driving back, and we were discussing some of the chaps that had been given chains. And I remember saying to Travis, what makes a good Mason? What quality do you need to become a chain? And he kept quiet for a long time. And then he said to me, you have to have presents. So I said, presents, Christmas presents? What do you mean presents? And he said to me, you need to have presence. He said, if you look at the guys that are chains, when they walk into a room, you know somebody important has walked into that room. They walk in and they command respect. And I thought, well, that's me. I'm done, boy. When I walk into a room, nobody even looks at me. So I really never gave myself this chance, to be honest, never.
Oh, wonderful insights. Thank you so much for sharing, Vaughn. And I must agree with you. For normal, wouldn't say normal. For the younger brethren like myself, I must say that really, you guys are so approachable, and we always get the advice that we need. It's more of a encouraging, collaborative atmosphere that's within chapter, within the district. And it's like when you're a young kid, it is nice to see your heroes sometimes and rub shoulders with them. But moving swiftly along from there. And I think this is perhaps one of my more favorite questions, but we have to tiptoe around this. It's difficult to answer a question when you can't really answer it. But Vaughn, without divulging too much, as we have prospective Royal Arch Masons in our midst, what is your favorite piece of Royal Arch ritual, or what can you elaborate a bit on that? And I know I'm throwing you under the bus with this one, but
yes, what a great question. I think the principal sojourner's work in the Royal Arch is the most rewarding. I won't divulge too much, but that piece about resuming our labors early this morning, we discovered a pair of pillars of exquisite design and workmanship. That whole piece is absolutely fantastic. It's a bit of a big bite to take. I think there's something like 7 pages in that. So when you start learning it, it's extremely difficult. Sorry, I see a sign that says my internet is unstable. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Vaughn, but we can give it a couple of seconds just for your internet to stabilize. If that would
Peter, switch.
I always say we've got the best internet in South Africa. Oh, brethren, let's just give Brother Vaughn just a minute or two just to sort himself out and his internet connection. I'm sure he will be with us shortly. Oh, there, we lost him.
Mike, I think he was there. He comes back on.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at it. There we go. That was quick.
Hi, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. We're back. It wasn't a long one, fortunately.
I just saw a sign that said your internet is unstable. I thought it meant Lance. Sorry, Mike, where did we get to?
Let me just pull up my notes. You were on the principal sojourner's work in the Royal Arch. We were talking about what you can divulge, your favorite part of Royal Arch ritual, so to speak. And you were saying, the principal sojourner's got the most phenomenal work or ritual in the ceremony. Oh my goodness.
Let's just give it another second, Mike. I think he'll come back on using another connection. There we go.
He's back.
Okay, sorry.
Here we are. Not a
Um,
problem.
Can you, sorry, Mike, can you tell me what was the last bit that you heard?
You were discussing the principal sojourners
The principal,
work.
yeah.
Yes.
So that piece where the principal sojourner takes the candidate and another sojourner on that crusade where they go preparing the ground for the rebuilding of the temple is absolutely amazing. And it needs to be done properly. It needs to be done by somebody that has not only learned the words properly, but can sort of reenact what happened. So none of us are actors or anything like that, but when it's done properly and it's done with feeling, and I see two of our companions up here, Brett Spears and Carl de Montiel, really great party pieces for them. They did it exceptionally well. The late Jeff Williams used to do it exceptionally well. And I loved that. In fact, I was principal sergeant, I think, for 3 years. I just never wanted to go past that, you know. I really enjoyed that. It's not only a nice piece of ritual, but it's wonderfully historic. And I think the best part about it is that, unlike a lot of other pieces of floor work that you do, it's a story. You know, it's a story that has a plot, and you can. It's so much easier to learn because it's not just a whole hodgepodge of big words. It's so much easier to learn. And I remember going to watch my youngster play rugby. He used to play for Jervis and Simmer, and they practiced on a Tuesday and Thursday night. It was so cold because they obviously play rugby in winter. It was freezing, so you couldn't sit on the stands during practice. And I would walk around the rugby field with Charmaine, my wife, and she would have the ritual book, and I would just recite it to her while I was walking. And that's how I learned it, walking around and around the rugby field. And it really was. It was so rewarding. And if any of the other chapters needed a principal sojourner, I always put my hand up and I rushed out to go and do that piece of work. So yeah, to me, that's definitely my favorite. Sorry about all those interruptions.
Not a problem at all, Vaughn. I think we all caught the most of it, and I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, if we look at the comments as well, Brother Howard Freeman says he totally agrees with you. So I think you struck a chord with many a companion tonight. Moving along from there, and this is perhaps also a question that's in many of the minds of the younger brethren or newer brethren. Why are some of the craft masonry officers automatically the equivalent rank in Royal Arch?
Well, a lot of, like, for example, director of ceremonies, you know, so you'll have a director of ceremonies and you'll have one, whether you're in a Mark Lodge or a Royal Arch chapter or a craft lodge, you always have a director of ceremonies. But I don't think that's what you're looking at. I think what you probably are looking at is, why is the district grand master also the grand superintendent? And although that's been the case in our district for many years, in the late 80s, it wasn't really the case. We had a district grand master and a grand superintendent who were two different people. It was just too much work. And I think as time progressed, it was easier to run both, have both run by the same person. And so the grand superintendent is the district grand master, and the district grand secretary is also the district grand scribe Ezra. So those are the two that run concurrently. And of course, His Royal Highness, the Duke of Kent, is not only our Grand Master, but also our first Grand Principal. So we've taken our cue from England. I think because the two, Craft and Royal Arch, because those two are so intertwined, it really does make sense. Now, you also have different ideologies from our district Grand Masters. For example, when Gerald Fortunakis was the district grand master, he sort of left most of the running of Royal Arch to the what would you call him? The Deputy Grand Superintendent. And in those days, it was Richard Moore. He really ran most of the Royal Arch, and Gerald ran the craft, even though he was the top man in both. And then when Professor Guy Charlesworth came along, he didn't quite like that, and he ran both of them together. We are now coming up to a new district Grand Master and Grand Superintendent, and I'm sure he'll want to stamp his influence the way he sees fit on proceedings. So it's not given that that's always going to be the situation. As I said, there have been instances where it wasn't, but every district Grand Master has his own way, and I think we'll see what Chris has got.
Thank you so much for shedding some light on that question, Vaughn. It's something that I've been curious about as well. Then this is more of a personal question, but I think we're all curious about this one as well. How do you balance your role as the second district Grand Principal in the Royal Arch with your personal life, as well as your other Masonic duties within the district? And taking that into account, can you please elaborate a bit on your duties and such as the second district Grand Principal of the district?
My wife asks me this quite often. It's a very, very difficult juggling act, I must say. So as a Mason, I have 10 meetings a year in my craft, and I also am a member of the Orphic Royal Arch chapter, so that's another 4 meetings, that's 14. As a chain, I have another 15 meetings, 39, and I'm going to be promoted to District Senior Grand Warden later this year, so that's going to be another probably 60 meetings a year. So there's just so much that you can do, and I would hate to have to drop the ball, for any of my Masonic commitments. Now, by profession, I'm a firearms instructor, so most of my work is over the weekends, and unfortunately, our visits to Petersburg and Zanin and Messina and all those places also happened over the weekends. I'm also heavily involved in motorsport. They race on the weekends as well. So when I sat down to do my diary about 3 weeks ago, it was absolutely impossible for me to juggle all of this. So I've taken a huge step away from motorsport, where I've been intimately involved for 26 or 27 years now. I've just moved away from it completely, so that I can give a little bit more attention to the craft and to my position as District Senior Grand Warden. But I think being a chain in the first year is a little onerous. You don't know anything about the chapters that you're going to visit or the people. You don't know what you're going to say. You don't know what little bits of hindsight you might give them. The second year, you sort of calm down a little bit and you've got it sussed. By the third year, I won't say you're bored, but you want something more. So I think this promotion in the craft has come at a good time for me, and I certainly won't be bored over the weekends, that's for sure. I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling. My son Peter is involved in the firearms industry with me, and he's just qualified as an instructor assessor as well. So that's going to just give me a little bit of time to get away on the weekends and to rejuggle my life. So I think it's going to be one really hectic year, and then things will calm down. But plan. You've got to write everything down. You can't remember things. You've got to have a diary. It really is difficult. Now, we always thought that the chains only worked that night. You went there, you put on your fancy chain, and you watched the meeting. Little did I know that we get monthly reports. We have to find out why certain lodges haven't kept up to date with their payments, why their paperwork hasn't been done, why their installation returns haven't been sent back to district. So what the district has done is they've divided all the chapters up amongst the chains and lance. And we've got, I think, 8 or 9, maybe even 10 chapters under our wings that we have to look after. And, if chapters are having problems getting new people to join or getting people to stay, obviously they look towards their chain to try and sort that problem out. And there's a lot more admin to it than I first thought there would be. So it didn't really come as a pleasant surprise. But, it's just too much work for a secretary or a district grand scribe Ezra to do. So we just step in and try and help.
I think all we can say is thank you for the sacrifices that you make and that other senior companions and members of the district makes. And I think it's easy for us to, at times overlook the phenomenal amount of work and planning and admin that goes into these things. Most of us just goes to a lodge on a week evening. We go and have our fun, or as in my Royal Arch chapter, the one that I joined first, we go in on a Saturday and, have a braai afterwards. But it's often overlooked that what needs to go into this for us to be able to have the amount of fun that we have and to practice our masonry. But all we can say is thank you, and thank you so much for giving us a peek behind the scenes. We will perhaps have a follow-up interview with your wife in the future. From there on, and this is perhaps, I don't know, for me it's a difficult question, but I think it might be easier for you. But our Book of Constitutions declares that pure and ancient masonry consists of 3 degrees and no more, those of entered apprentice, fellow craft, and master mason, including the supreme order of the Holy Royal Arch. Is this still applicable in modern Freemasonry?
Well, yes, absolutely. It's no coincidence that it's in our Book of Constitutions, very much so. And our past Grand Superintendent or Deputy Grand Superintendent, excellent companion Tim Smith, often used to discuss this very thing. And the fact that it seems to fall under the umbrella of the craft, I think, is very pertinent. We all, without giving too much away, we all know that in the 3rd degree, we are faced with the terrible death of our Grand Master Hiram Abiff, and as a result of that, a lot of the secrets of Masonry are lost. And our wardens teach us that we bring certain substituted secrets to the table, and we have to be satisfied with those substituted secrets, not knowing what the true secrets are. And when we join the Holy Royal Arch, we go through that ceremony where we are involved in finding those long lost secrets of a master mason. So I think that if you don't join the Holy Royal Arch, you don't get to know those secrets. Now, knowing secrets isn't everything about being a good Freemason. Being a good Freemason means that you're a good, humble person. You help others. You participate in charitable events. A lot of people aren't that interested in finding out what that was. I'm different. I had to know. I really had to know. I would have dug up the whole garden to find out what it was. So for me, it was a natural progression. And I'm always amazed at guys that have been Masons for 10 and 15 years that haven't joined the Royal Arch. I want to shake them and say, well, don't you want to know what happened? Aren't you interested in what happened? But as I said earlier, as you progress through your career in Masonry, so different things become objective and different things become interesting to you. And you don't always have to know everything. A lot of people are just happy going to lodge on the first Monday of every month and meeting everybody and sitting, having a chat and having supper and then going home until the next month. It doesn't make them a bad Mason. It just makes them somebody that may not be interested in that whole historical part of it. For me, it's pertinent, and it's pertinent that craft Masonry includes the Holy Royal Arch, because you only finish your journey when you become a Royal Archmason. But then once you become a Royal Archmason, you learn about the Knights Templar and the Order of the Secret Monitor and the Rose Choir, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And they are all very divorced from those first 3 degrees, including the Holy Royal Arch. So the Holy Royal Arch holds hands with craft masonry all the time.
Thank you for those insights again. It's I think one of those questions that everyone that's actually read our Book of Constitutions wanted to ask. Again, I think we're getting a lot of practical knowledge here tonight as well. This is perhaps a question along similar lines, but I think it might still be worthwhile asking this. But why do you as the second district Grand Principal think that it is still important in today's age for the Master Mason to become a companion? And again, maybe just if you could boil it down to perhaps your purest thoughts on that. Why is it still important for a Master Mason to become a companion?
I think if you look at Royal Arch historically, you were only permitted to become a Royal Arch Mason once you had passed the chair of your craft lodge, which meant that you were probably in your late 60s already before you got to become a Royal Arch Mason, and very few people got through the chair of Royal Arch Masonry. So what they did was they changed the rule, and they made it that you had to have been a Master Mason for 4 weeks and upwards. Now, what happens is straight after you've become a Master Mason, to rush straight into the Holy Royal Arch it might be a little bit too soon. But having been a Master Mason for a few years, you tend to absorb everything that there is there. And you do start to yearn for something more. You start to look for some more knowledge. Now, our 3 craft degrees work in trying to improve us as people. If you look at the first degree charge, where they talk about the volume of the sacred law and consider it as the unerring standard of truth and justice. So we learn to read the Bible and honor what we see in the Bible and take it as truth. It then goes on to say, as a citizen of the world, you have to look after your country, the laws of your country, and you always have to nurture your country of birth. It goes on to talk about, as a Mason, there are different things, your secrecy and things. So you tend to find a new you as a craft Mason. You improve yourself, and the more you say things like the northeast corner, where you learn about charity and things, the more you go into this, the more you improve yourself. Whereas when you go into the Holy Royal Arch, you improve your relationship with God. You really do. And you can be a Royal Arch Mason as a Muslim, as a Catholic, as a Protestant, as a Jew. It doesn't really matter. But there is definitely a connection between yourself and the spiritual you, which you don't find in the craft. And I think you only complete the journey of learning about yourself as a person when you complete your spiritual bond with God. And that is so necessary in the Holy Royal Arch. And what I find that I love about the Holy Royal Arch is that you can pick up a Bible and flick through the Old Testament, and there are so many things in that Bible that pertain to the Holy Royal Arch, which you didn't know about before as a craft Mason. You learn about Cyrus, king of Persia, and King Nebuchadnezzar, and what happened in Babylon and in Persia and all the rest of it. And these are all historically significant things. And it just helps to open your eyes a little bit. And you see, we used to always joke when we read the Old Testament as naughty school kids, because the Jews were in the desert for 40 years, and we say, oh, they didn't have a garment, or there's no Google Maps, or something like that, you know. But it's only when you go through what they did in the desert, why they were in the desert, how they were led out of the desert, that's when you start to appreciate what actually happened. And to me, the Holy Royal Arch is just that. It's a journey that explains so much in the Bible to you that you may not have considered before, or you may not have considered it correctly before. And I think I've learned a great deal by being a Holy Royal Arch Mason. I really do.
Very, very enlightening, Vaughn. Thank you so much. While we on this topic, you know, discussing the intricacies of Royal Arch and why it's still important for the, you know, for the Master Mason in this day and age to join the order. What I would also like to touch on is, if you look at the progressive orders that we have, what, for lack of a better term, the Royal Arch, to what other degrees is Royal Arch a stepping stone, or what other degrees require Royal Arch? If you could just maybe touch a bit on that dynamic as well. I'm sure a lot of the younger brethren would love to find out, you know, for what they need Royal Arch and what they can gain by joining Royal Arch.
Okay, well, there are quite a few rubs moving up, you know, rub-offs from Royal Arch. And I see behind you, you've got some Knights Templar regalia and swords and all kinds of things. So obviously you have to be a Royal Arch Mason in order to go to the Knights Templar. Now, once you pass the Royal Arch, you can choose to go between the Christian degrees and the non-Christian degrees. You can choose both if you're a Christian, but unfortunately the non-Christians can only choose the non-Christian degrees. And in the Holy Royal Arch, you are given a word, and that word you need to get into the Knights Templar. And you are introduced as a Royal Arch companion when you go into the Knights Templar. So I find that possibly of all the other side degrees, the Knights Templar is the most fascinating. I love the Knights Templar. And you really have to have become a Royal Arch companion or Mason before joining the Knights Templar. And then what I find strange, it's a little known side degree, but the Knights Templar priests is also fascinating. And in the Knights Templar priests, without going into too much about what happens, you go to a number of different pillars, and you introduce to the person at that pillar, and he has to prove you. And it's the only time that I've ever used the Royal Arch penal sign was in a Knights Templar priest meeting, you know, because you never use it really in the Royal Arch. So there are quite a few. And then if you look, again, I'm not giving away too much, but if you look at the Holy Royal Arch, you talked about the 3 grand and royal lodges, the first of which is with Moses, Aholiab, and Bezaleel, who conducted that first lodge at the foot of Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb, sorry, the foot of Mount Horeb in the wilderness of Sinai. And those 3 you mention again in the Knights Templar. You actually toast to those 3. And in the Order of the Secret Monitor, you also learn about those 3. So there are so many ways that you can join the dots by moving from the Royal Arch up. There are many, many ways that you can join the dots into a whole lot of different subclasses. And I just feel that is your T-junction of Masonry, where you're now going to choose which way you're going to go. But you have to have gone through that first to appreciate what's going to happen in the later degrees.
Thank you, Brother Vaughn. Again, yeah, I think we're tapping a well of information tonight. I see we're running short on time at the moment, and I would love to spend hours upon hours discussing this with you. And we haven't even gotten to some questions on on our chat group, and I think I'm going to be saving them for a future occasion. And if you wouldn't mind perhaps doing a follow-up interview with us, and maybe get on some of the tougher questions. There is one or two that I want to pose to you after this, and perhaps give you a bit of prep time on that. But if I can, if you would indulge us with one last question, and I think perhaps this is also one of the more practical ones. How does, for those that are not in the know, you are a Master Mason, you have been one for longer than 4 weeks, you are interested in the Royal Arch. What is the practical steps that that those brethren can take to approach someone, or get into the order, or engage with companions at least?
Well, Mike, unlike the craft, when you join a craft lodge, you are told that you need to knock. In other words, you need to approach a Mason and say to him, I'd really like to join, or he might drop a few hints, and then you need to pick up on it as a prospective candidate. With the Royal Arch, you really have to wait to be invited. And the way it was some time ago is the guys would sit and they would watch a new youngster coming up along the ranks, and they would say, that's who we want, and that's the chap that we want to propose and have him exalted into our chapter. So you had to wait to be invited. But society has changed, and that doesn't really happen anymore. We are in a time of instant gratification. And what's happening now, more so than before, is Master Masons are coming to me and saying, I've heard about this Royal Arch, how does it work? And they sort of push themselves through the door in order to be invited. But, if you don't put your hand up and you don't ask, you don't get. And I'm very reluctant to go to a newly made Master Mason and say, well, it's time now for you to join the Royal Arch, because you don't want to push them into it. You don't know what their financial situation is. You don't know how happy their wives are going to be about them spending another 4 or 5 nights a year away. So I tend to still wait for them to come to me. And I think that's wrong. People like Lance, for example, chase them with a lasso, and he corrals them to come and join. But I think a little bit of both is good. If they show an interest, go after them, explain a little bit to them, make them wait. You don't want to just rush them into it, because they might just be going there just to find out what happens. And that is a recipe for disaster, because they're not going to stay long. I like to just dangle the carrots and see if they keep coming to take a bite, and then finally taking out the papers. But they do need to ask. It's a difficult thing to know. You can look at Google, and it's going to tell you 3 or 4 or 5 different reasons why you should become a Mason, of which 3 of them are rubbish. So wait for them to ask. Just drop little stompies around them and wait for them to pick those stompies up and go and chat to them after that.
Thank you so much, Vaughn. This has been so enlightening. It has been truly an honor and a privilege to spend this time with you tonight. And I will most certainly be scheduling a revisit on this later in the year. I've had so much fun. Thank you again for all the time and the effort and the sacrifices that that you and your team makes on a daily basis. We really do appreciate it. And I just want to thank you from my side. And with that, I would like to hand over to Brother Lance Epstein for the rest.
Mike, thanks for that. Vaughn, you've warmed up. So I'm really now going to take over and begin with the harder questions. Are you ready? Sip of water? No, I'm not going to do that. We've really trying to keep this to 45 minutes. But, in saying that, excellent companion Gareth Jones, the 3rd Grand Principal, agreed, or we all speak off the same page, because he really spoke of the Royal Arch as the final piece of the jigsaw. We agree, it is in the Book of Constitutions, but it's certainly not compulsory. but we have to make it attractive. We have to give them that wow factor, walking in, seeing the setup. They want to be involved. They want to understand the history. Not everyone is philosophical about Masonry. Some just want the enjoyment. And more importantly is I think a lot of the chaps get told the workings are intense. And I can tell you all now, that can be broken up into 14 pieces quite easily. Vaughn, we have quite a bit. I would love to have asked you why we don't have a United Grand Chapter, and maybe we can hold that off for next time, and only a United Grand Lodge, and then a number of other things. But I think based on the interest, we'll come back and see if we can continue the interview further. Brethren, thank you once again. Next week, we're going to have a presentation from the MARC, followed by the OSM. I'm hoping the District Grand Mentor is going to present something on the pathway, which comes from the United Grand Lodge of England. And at the same time, Paul Knight, who's the District Grand Master of the Royal and Select Masters, known as the Cryptic Degrees, is also going to give us a presentation. So long may Masons at Work continue, and not to take anything away from Lyceum Lodge of Research. They will still continue presenting papers, but I think the papers will be of a more serious note. We're going to keep it lighthearted on this forum. We're going to keep it interesting. We're going to bring back the candidates. We're going to bring back into the apprentices. We're going to ask questions. We're going to have fun. And as I always said, the past District Grand Master Guy Charlesworth said, let's have fun. That's what we're going to do. Brethren, gentlemen, I certainly hope we have a favorable announcement on the 16th, 17th, or 18th of August. And until next week, I bid you a good night. I do know there are two questions, which I'm not going to go into now. What makes a good Royal Arch Freemason? And maybe you can end on that. And then one says, would it be too radical to require all candidates for all side degrees to be Royal Arch Masons? And I think that that's a discussion in its own. So maybe, Vaughn, in conclusion, what makes a good Royal Arch Freemason? And then we can call it a night.
The hunger and lust for knowledge.
There you have it. Absolutely wonderfully put. Brethren, on that note, gentlemen, I thank you. Ladies, if you are listening, I thank you most sincerely for being with us. Stay warm, stay safe, and hopefully we see you next week. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you, Vaughn. Thank you, Lance. Have a good evening. Stay safe, brethren.
Thank you.
Good night all.
Good night.